Hello, everybody that's joining us. We're here with Dr. Tawny Kross, and we're talking about movement and chronic pain. Specifically for today, we're talking about rigidity in movement, rigidity in approach, rigidity in mindset, and basically how that affects our nervous system and how we approach movement. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I think that we really want to emphasize, like, there's just so many people that talk about, like, this is the technique and this is like how we want to engage our core or pull on our ribs or do whatever. And so I think that there's a lot of problems with the rigid mindset for a bunch of different reasons. And we do want to also bring in a bit of Pilates into this too, because I know that Pilates, there are different, I think you called it classical versus more flexible types of Pilates. So let's start there. Can you give us maybe some thoughts and beliefs on, like, rules in Pilates, cueing and all that stuff that kind of grinds your gears?
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of open it up and just get our brains kind of thinking whether your approach is classical or different, or maybe you have classical, you move to contemporary, or maybe you kind of move between both. I wanted to kind of open it with some questions about how we feel, whether we're a teacher or a student, because we're always a student, when we're moving. So I wanted to ask if guaranteed people are going to be like, oh yes, this exactly happened to me. Like, was there a cue that your body just couldn't understand? I have had this happen both personally, but also with clients as I'm teaching. And have you been trying to execute a movement correctly for many, many years, and you just keep hitting a wall? And that wall might be a flexibility, mobility, strength, weakness, whatever. You just keep hitting the wall and you keep thinking, okay, I'm trying to do the cue, I'm trying to do the movement, but you're just not getting anywhere. So I just want to open up by saying I was a stickler for alignment and biomechanics and precise execution. And my perspective has definitely changed since adding joint specific mobility and techniques, and approach and mindset, everything, right? Because the body is far more adaptable, and the nervous system responds better to variability. So should I get into my points, and then we'll go over to you? So my points will be more based on movement, because obviously that's my world. Mm-hmm. And Tawny will really tie it into chronic pain. Sound good to you?
For people who are here, like, feel free to ask questions, especially if they're
absolutely. Yes, please ask questions. Hopefully we'll be able to answer them, but we can definitely answer them when I post it, and then we can comment. Yeah. All right. So I'm basically going to go kind of through 3 points personally today. And then I will send it to Tawny to kind of tie it into chronic pain, because I'm going to really be approaching this from the perspective as a teacher and a longtime student of Pilates. And the first one that I wanted to talk about was how our cues tend to be very subjective. They don't always make sense internally in a person's body. Some of the ones that I like to throw out are relax your shoulders, or pull your shoulders back and down, pull your ribs down. I think you said that already. Engage your core, use your abs. One of the ones that I used to get, grow through your sit bones. Like, what does that mean internally in a person's body, individually? Like, we're so different. So, oh yes, scooping the abs to deepen your hip flexion or your ankle dorsiflexion. Okay. That is not how the body interprets movement. That's not, your joints and your brain do not think that way. They do not understand what that cue means. So that can be pretty frustrating if that's the cue that you're being given to enhance your practice, right? Or to get that movement. So that can be frustrating, right? And you might think, what is wrong with me? Like, why can't I do this? Or Yeah, I think just the broad sense of frustration, right? So wanted to kind of throw that out there and just talk about how our cueing could be different. I don't want to say, I can tell what my experience is for cueing it is, but I don't want to tell people how to cue. I just want people to think about that in a broader sense, like that it could be very subjective, and I think we could do better. Also, very guilty of this, over cueing or fixating on posture and alignment, right? So again, going back to the idea that there's a lot of variability in a person's body, right? And if we are constantly trying to regulate over their body or how their nervous system is interpreting movement, executing movement, that can actually, I think you like to say, lead to more stiffness, or can really work against the nervous system's like dynamic way of moving as a system. So I feel like mobility, actually, joint mobility training really gave me that freedom to kind of move away personally, self-regulating, because you're training the stuff that you move with. And then when it comes to moving, you just go. And what happens, happens. And, you know, see, and maybe you discover like you have more stuff to work with. Okay, my last point before I hand it over to Tawny is the pitfalls of rigidity. So you were talking about rigidity in our practice. So I don't want to overspeak for classical trainers at all, but there can be a rigidity on this exercise is done this way. It goes after this exercise. This is how you start the exercise. This is how you transition to the exercise. And I find that that can lead to a lot of self-blame and negativity, because it's like, if I can't get it this way, if I can't do it this way, if I can't execute it this way, and then I'm not doing it right, or there's something wrong with me, and that's not what we're trying to achieve in a movement practice. And also we are kind of, again, denying the body and the nervous system that variability, excuse me, because we're trying to stick to a correct way of moving, of our posture. And it kind of stiffens everything up, both physically, physiologically, and I think even emotionally and mentally. So have you, Tawny, had cues that you've seen make a person's pain worse?
Oh yeah. There's, and you're right. I just kind of going back to all your different points. Let's start with the last point you had, which is that your guidelines can either take people into a place of feeling safe and trusting their body, mm-hmm. to feeling actually more scared and nervous. So the question that people have often, I'm sure you bump into this, is, am I doing this right?
All the time.
But the question that they actually are asking is, if I don't do this right, is it going to hurt me? Or especially when it comes to pain, is this movement safe for me? And mm-hmm. So the more that we get into this idea, there's only one right way to do it, the more we actually do foster that sense of fear around the body. Oh no, if I do this, it's going to be wrong. This is going to be harmful. Mm-hmm. This is going to increase more pain. And if I am feeling pain, it must be wrong, right? There's like this feed forward vicious cycle that occurs, and it is incredibly unhelpful and very ineffective when it comes to helping people understand their bodies and their nervous systems. So yeah, there are, and I'm also guilty of this too, because like you, like I was trained very heavily in the movement field, very much in biomechanics, and like, all right, like you should look like this and this type of posture, when the science has shifted so much in the past 10, 20 years, that has shown us that posture, alignment, perfect symmetry, biomechanics actually have very poor correlation with pain. And the more that we continue to perpetuate those ideas, the more that the model of pain and perfect bodies continues to persist. And then so does pain persist. So yeah, there's the cueing that I think beyond, this is the right way to do it, or like you should feel your glutes, or you should like even when you're not
Oh, that's a good one too.
Right? Like, you want to feel this muscle, and they're like, but I don't.
Your glutes aren't on.
Your glutes aren't on. Your glutes are always on, actually. Or like you want to think about like the core, like engage your core. The core is engaged quite naturally most of the time, right? When people cannot engage their core, let's just take a very extreme example, like someone who had a C-section. They can't get up the stairs because they're like, whoa, that feels weird. Like my stomach like feels funky. So we want to appreciate that throughout your daily life, whatever type of movement, whether it's Pilates, classical, not classical, if you're engaging in some amount of physical activity, your muscles are engaged and involved in some sort of movement. If you're standing up, your glutes are engaged, because if you don't have your glutes engaged, you'd be falling down, right? Your muscles have to work together. And yes, of course, it's great to be able to feel when muscles are engaged or not. And some of that is actually dependent on body awareness. If you have learned to ignore body signals, which oftentimes happens when we have push-through mentalities, when we have chronic pain and we have this huge mind-body disconnect, we aren't going to be always aware of like what muscles are there or not there. I have some people where they're just like, I feel nothing. I don't think anything's turning on, even though they're like, they've got the bicep curl looking correctly or whatever like movement they're doing. They're like, I don't feel anything.
Yeah.
And so then the cue that's more important there is, okay, well, what do you feel that's different from the other side? Like how, like your muscles obviously are contracting on this side, otherwise you wouldn't be able to stand or hold this weight or whatever. And how does that feel compared to the other side? So building body awareness is actually way more important than like the actual technique. I think that that would be the main things I want to emphasize when it comes to nervous system. And going back to that original question is, again, your nervous system is making a very quick decision. Am I safe? Am I in danger? Am I safe? Am I in danger? And that goes for anything in life. The food that I eat, the email that I'm writing, the movie that I'm watching, if I'm driving down the street, like which way do I swing? Am I in safety or am I in danger? And the more that people say, this is wrong, this is not good, the more your system is getting this feedback of lack of safety. And the less safe the nervous system feels, the more protective it becomes. And the more protective it becomes, the more likely it actually drives pain.
Yeah. So it's almost like your world shrinks. Yeah.
Yeah. And really,
so whether it's a movement world or a life world, right? It's just shrinking.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I wanted to actually go back to your talking about awareness. I have particularly particularly found that some of my chronic pain people have difficulty with self-awareness. And I'm having one of those light bulb moments right now where in your discussion, I'm thinking, could it be because of that training of the nervous system and the world getting smaller, that the awareness is sort of on the outer skirts of what is safe? And so even if they're feeling now safe to go beyond those borders, there's just a sense of kind of being lost, maybe?
Yeah. You could say, so on just the body map level.
Yeah.
So when we move or when we appreciate what a body looks like, what a body's doing, we cue certain maps in our brains that correlate with that body part. And it has been shown that people who have, let's say, a strong mind-body disconnection, have more pain in the area, that map gets really fuzzy. They're like, I don't know, like your brain doesn't know like what's going on. So there's a little bit of that going on, and to some extent, you're training the nervous system to lose that connection. this is not a great example because it's not necessarily on muscles, but I was reading, do you remember Jeff Kobayashi? The hot dog eater. He was in the news fairly recently because he's lost his ability to feel hunger. He no longer knows when he's hungry because all his life, I know, wild, right? All his life, food has been competition. I eat 70 hot dogs and 70 buns like this. Otherwise, I don't eat. And like his stomach actually, the way that his training has been, the behaviors around food has altered his body signals. So his body's like, if I'm not training, I don't eat. Or like it doesn't know when to eat.
Oh, it's totally associated it with dog eating competition.
Right, exactly.
That is bizarre.
Yeah. Which is a really, I bring it up because that's like sort of what happens with your system. Yeah. It can turn off signals, it can turn on signals, it can lose awareness, it can increase awareness. And not to say that that's always going to be the case, but he's going to have to do some rewiring, some retraining, food associations, and starting to appreciate his body signals turn back on.
Right. Which is also a very cool thing that our bodies can do that Absolutely. We can actually consistently, the plasticity, right? That we can consistently rewire, add a little bit more here, add a little bit more there. So, yeah, that's actually a really cool example. I know it doesn't like directly correlate, but it does.
Yes, totally.
So are there, I guess, is there something that we could walk away with as far as cueing or approaching movement or our mindset, even when it comes to when we find ourselves in that movement, that moment of rigidity, whether self-imposed or even in a class setting?
Yeah. One thing that I really like that I heard, actually, I think she's commented on a couple of posts, like Mila has written.
Mila,
yeah, she's awesome. She does this cueing where she says, like, what feels right to you? If it doesn't feel right to you or good to you in the moment, like, now that gives you permission. It may not be the perfect cue always, but what I love about it is it gives you permission and it gives you curiosity and exploration. Like, what feels right? And like, okay, what does feel right to me? Right?
Yeah.
And that there's a wider range of what that person can do versus like it has to look like this.
I want to tack on to that. I have people going back to the very beginning where we're saying, am I doing this right? Or is this right? Those two things. I like to say, where are you feeling it? Is that where we want to feel it today? Like, okay, maybe we do, but like, if that's not what we're going for, that's not the intent that we're looking for, let's explore how we can maybe get it there. And offering that opportunity to kind of tune in to their body, give them the freedom of exploration, but also having, again, what you're saying, let them choose choose getting there, choose what is right. And sometimes it's not what was intended, but I'm like, hey, let's go with it. And I've started using also, you're in charge. You're in charge of how deep your stretch is. You're in charge of, do you want to add more resistance? Okay, give it a couple tries. Do you want to add more? You want to take them once? You know, like I try to say you're in charge. And I feel like that gives them that empowers them and gives them the power of their movement into their body back.
Yeah, no, I love that because it's true. Like, one, they are in charge, and it might feel scary to them, right? Especially the person who is like very dependent on someone else.
So dependent,
right or whatever, right? So there's a little bit of vulnerability that comes with being able to give permission in that way, and we want to recognize that the person that is experiencing the movement or whatever that you're cueing them to do is literally the only expert on their own bodies. Like, you can't feel it, they do. So if they don't bring their expertise to the table, it's less effective exercise because they're missing like a really key expertise opinion in there. So as you empower people to start to be able to be curious and explore, it's going to come with some sense of discomfort and growth because obviously you're challenging them. And it also is a huge opportunity for that mind-body connection to sharpen as they learn to explore like what is right for them and what feels good, and being able to step into a confidence of like what that means for them.
Yeah, getting some clearer maps on the back on the map, right? Yeah. Some clearer roads on that big map that we have.
Absolutely.
So I think we kind of got, I guess we added that whole cueing. I think one thing I want to say is to offer is a different cue as far as I do not say use your abs or use your core. Like that, those words used to come out of my mouth very frequently because I've been teaching for a very long time. I don't say that anymore. Like people say, oh, I want to, when they first come in and they say, oh, I want to work my core. I want to have a better core or want a better posture. I'm like, first off, you're probably not going to hear me say core or abs, but 100% you're going to feel that. And I want to offer people an opportunity to, how can you work the core, but never say those words, right? So I use spine and breathing. Boom, core. If you kind of know where those things are, no matter what you're doing, and kind of feel where they are in space, guaranteed, gonna feel the core.
Yeah, I love that.
Have anything you want to add, Tawny, that people can walk away with? I think they're walking away with like notes though.
Yeah. I use more of a not necessarily muscle cue, although like muscle tension is definitely one of like, where do you feel muscle tension? What do you feel is engaged or not engaged? But in the interest of helping people explore bodies, I'm like, what do you notice change about your breath? What do you notice change about your mood? Like, what kind of thoughts are you having? So, because like we want to remember that pain does come with not just like the movement portion. There's like the emotional, the psychological, and if you kind of understand where your system is in that range, like, oh my gosh, like I'm starting to get more irritated, or like my breath is becoming more shallow, that means that my system might be getting a cue that it's like it's reaching the end of its like tolerance and it wants to back off a little bit. So less so on pain, less so on like what muscles are engaged, more like what's my overall tension, like how is my system interpreting this particular situation, this particular movement.
Yeah, that gets me thinking. Like, you don't have to constantly be doing that, but you could definitely check in when you notice or you're entering an area of movement or stretch that has a tendency to trigger them, right? Yeah. All right, high five. This is a good one.
Are there any questions for people that are still with us?
It's a very quiet group. They're like too busy going like this, hopefully. Well, if anyone comes up with questions, feel free to DM Tawny or me, or put them in the comments when we put the video back up. I might even review it too, because I'm like, ooh, I like that. Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, we're happy to answer any questions y'all might have.
Yeah. So thank you, Tawny, for joining me in this great talk. We are back on, oh shoot, I forgot the date. In 2 weeks.
April 4th or something like that.
Yeah, April 4th. And what is our next topic, Tawny?
Next topic, oh gosh, you're pulling all the things that I haven't thought about in a minute. We'll have to come back to that one, but I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I think it's, let's see, we are going to be diving into another good one. They're all good, but like they're getting better, I think. Why doing the same exercises over won't actually train your nervous system. That is a big one, huge one for anybody in a movement practice, right? Yep. Because there's a tendency, yoga, Pilates, to pattern, right? Constant pattern. Yep. Yeah. And if you're stuck, despite all that, yeah, to be a good one. So you'll want to tune in.
Super
all right.
excited.
Thank you all for joining. Yay!
Good to see you.
We got on. Woo! Remember to DM or comment if you have questions. All right. See you guys April 4th.
Bye.
Bye.